So, have you ever or do you ever struggle with anger, bitterness, and frustration towards someone else? Do you ever see yourself in a posture or a place of unforgiveness where it's difficult, if not impossible, for you to forgive someone for what they did, or more specifically, what they did to you? Me too. If you answered yes to those questions, you're not alone because you're listening to or looking at someone who struggles with that very same thing. To be honest, today's kind of devotional wasn't going to be geared towards that. It was going to be geared towards gratitude. I was going to really express to all of you out there who listen and who watch how thankful I am for you. I get text messages when I see some of you, out at parties and things like that. You pull me aside and say thank you and talk about, the fact you watch these things. And so I was going to really just spend some time being grateful for all of you. Now, let me call a quick time out and say this. If these have impacted you, I would love for you to do a couple things. First, if there is one that you like, I would love for you to like that on whatever social media platform you're consuming it on. And I would also love for you to subscribe to these on iTunes. That would be phenomenal. And if you could leave a review or a ratings on iTunes, that would be fantastic. What I'll do is I'll tag our iTunes address in this when I'm finished, and you can just click that and subscribe. We'd love for you to do that. So anyway, I was going to talk about gratitude and talk about all that I just spoke on right now. But yesterday morning, just transparency, yesterday morning I woke up and I found myself having a conversation with someone in my head, an argument with someone in my head that I was winning. Now, whenever we have arguments with people in our head, somebody, you had a tense conversation with somebody, or somebody got mad at you and chewed you out, or whatever that looked like, somebody just did something you didn't approve of. Whenever we have that type of conversation with someone, we go home and what do? We rehash the conversation in our minds, or at least I do. And in that conversation we rehash in our mind, we always win. We always come up with the zinger. We always come up with like the great point, and we can rehash that conversation over and over and over again because we're struggling with bitterness, we're struggling with unforgiveness, and there's anger and resentment welling up in our heart. I found myself doing that yesterday morning. Just a situation, a whole deal happened, and I was having that conversation with that person in my head, and I was winning it. Then I sat down at my desk, I started thinking, and I was like, if I'm in a situation like that where, instead of getting up and spending time with the Lord and really just enjoying the morning before things get going, if my morning is consumed with the frustration and anger and the fake conversations I'm having with people in my head because I'm still angry at them and I'm not forgiving them and I'm not walking in grace towards them, that's not freedom. That's not freedom. That's bondage. And the thing we've got to see is by walking in unforgiveness, by walking in a place where we are harboring resentment in our hearts, we're in a place where we're not letting go of the offenses that people have done to us. We're not putting them in jail, we're putting ourselves in jail. Now, quick time out, just talking about forgiveness. First of all, I'm not talking about seeking justice and being like, I'm not going to seek justice. Like if someone stole my car, I can simultaneously forgive them in my heart, but yet allow the justice system to do its thing. I'm not talking about, someone hurt me. By forgiving them, you have to restore them to exactly the same place that they were, because if you do that, they'll probably hurt you again. I'm not saying any of those things. But forgiveness is simply releasing them of the debt they owe you in your heart because they hurt you and wounded you. Because what you're trying to do when you harbor unforgiveness is you're trying to hurt or wound them on their heart level in the same way they did to you. And forgiveness is letting go of that. Because if you don't, you're bitter, you're angry, you're having fake conversations with people in your head all the time, and that's bondage. Now, one of the prayers that I have for these devotionals is that it's not just Christians, and I'm not just preaching to the choir, although I hope many believers out there are watching these, but I hope that non-Christians are getting to view these too. And the thing I would say to the person who's watching this, who isn't a Christian, is what I just described to you is next to impossible. It's difficult for the Christian to do. I can't imagine as a non-Christian what it would be like to try to forgive. And here's why I say that. We as a people, we seek justice. We know that. Like, we see that. Our news stories and our news coverage are dominated by people seeking justice. And that's a good thing. And the reason we do that is because we're created in God's image and He is a just God. So we as a people seek justice. And here's what happens. If you've created a god or a deity that is basically just fairies and pixie dust, and He's all love, He just loves you, He wraps His arms around, sinners, and just, that's who He is, and there's no wrath component to God. He's not an angry and a just God. And you can't forgive people. And the reason you can't forgive people is because someone needs to make them pay for the offense that they did to you. And if God isn't going to do it, well, by golly, you're going to do it yourself. Right? See, the God that I serve is grace, love, and mercy. He's all of those things. But the reason He can be those things is because His just wrath was poured out on Jesus on the cross. So all of the things that I've done to other people that might cause bitterness in their heart towards me and unforgiveness towards me, and I'm sure I've left a wake of destruction just like anybody else, that person can forgive me because they know that that sin was punished in Jesus on the cross. And so if you're looking at God and you're like, oh man, I don't believe in this God of wrath. I think that's just so Old Testament, old school. The new cool God that we've given the extreme makeover to, He's just love. Well, listen, when someone sins against you, you can't forgive them because they need to pay, and the only person who's going to make them pay is you. Now, for the Christian, here's the deal. Every single offense, every single sin that was committed against you will be paid for justly. That's such good news in a way because it means I don't have to seek justice. I can let God do what God does in bringing about justice because either that sin will be paid for in hell for all eternity or Jesus paid for it on the cross. But nevertheless, God doesn't gloss over it and go, oh, it's not a big deal. You need to just get over it. That's not the God we serve. So here's what I want to do. I want to read, as we close, I want to read Romans 12 because these ideas come out of Romans chapter 12, verses 18 through 21. Let me read it to you. It says this. Paul writes, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12, 18 through 21. And I think those verses are helpful as we kind of sum up what we just saw. We just saw and just discussed that Jesus is going to take care of it. So back to yesterday morning, whatever was frustrating me, I can go, you know what, God, like I need to be faithful in this. I need to speak the truth in this, but I don't have to worry about that person being punished for the wrong that I perceive they did to me because you're going to take care of it. And in that frees me up. And it says, God's going to take care of this. God's going to bring about justice in this. I can just walk in truth. I can walk in love. I can tell the person the truth in love because I don't have to exact some vengeance and like not tell them something they need to hear in hopes that they will stumble and fall. So anyway, I hope this was helpful on this Friday as we all continue to battle with this. But I hope that as we do battle with it, we will see how greatly we've been forgiven by Jesus so that we can extend that forgiveness to other people. You guys have a great weekend.